Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Steve Anderson. We're in Hudson, Wisconsin today, the 15th of July, 2014. And we're fortunate to have a couple of guests, Siobhan Marks and Mark Denning, who are here with the Indian Summer Festival to do a program or oversee a program here in Hudson. They're also representing the Horse Nation, and I'm going to just simply ask Siobhan to start out and tell us what's going on with the presentation tonight and what are some of the facts we should know.
Very good. Thank you for that. Well, we represent Indian Summer Festival, and that's we are in our 28th year in Milwaukee on beautiful Lake Michigan shoreline. This year's theme is Horse Nation Celebration, and so with that, Mark and I have been on the road doing what we call the Medallion the Stallion Painted Pony Roadshow. We've been going into various communities all through the state, some into Michigan and Northern Illinois, with hands-on learning activities for children. We have various coloring sheets. We try to teach the kids a little bit about some diversity of the native story with horses, and we also allow them to paint the ponies. So we have 3 various ponies. We've got one of them right behind us, our little Pendy here, and put paintbrush in kids' hands and let them go at it and have fun, and they've really been enjoying it and hopefully learning something along the way. There's
also a dance then, I understand.
Absolutely. There's a horse dance. If you come to Indian Summer Festival, you'll see that. Mark was given the Ojibwe horse dance by 2 elders from one of our communities, Bad River as well as Lakota Ray. And then we have another fabulous dancer, who's a champion dancer as well, that's going to demonstrate the Sioux horse dance.
How many people are in the troupe then, or would be dancing tonight?
In the dance, well, we don't really have a dance troupe at Indian Summer Festival. It's a huge festival. We have a contest powwow that goes on. We also have tribal villages. We have a group coming in called the Native Pride Dancers, and they come in and perform. We have typically every year Aztec dancers and various cultural demonstration and perhaps dances. We have a brand new designed village area that's called the Living Cultures of the Great Lakes, and you will see beautiful freshwood arbors and all kinds of demonstrations, including dance, performed in that area representing all 11 tribes of Wisconsin.
Now you're talking about the big event that's going to be September 5th, 6th, and 7th this year. Where is that going to be held?
That is in Milwaukee and the Mayer Festival grounds. So essentially downtown Milwaukee, but right along the Lake Michigan shoreline.
Is there an admission charge for this?
There is an admission charge. Right now, advance tickets are available. If you go to our website, www.indiansummer.org, you can learn all about our ticket prices and hours.
Great. Well, can one of you sort of tell us about the importance of the horse to American Indian history and culture, particularly with regard to the fact that what we're speaking of is really mostly east of the Mississippi in what would be thought of as the woodland American Indians. And I think a lot of people don't realize how important the horse was to that side of the river. We all think of the horse in the Great Plains and the western Indian tribes, but what about in our territory?
In our territory, we're excited about it. As a board member at Indian Summer, I have some responsibilities and duties, and part of that is to the theme this year, and it is indeed about horses. The exciting thing about it is that story east of the Mississippi River. In Wisconsin history alone, our shared history, our cultural story, meaning Native folks, and Wisconsin citizens as well, have a deep history in trapping and tradition of logging. And horses were a key factor in both those industries. And it's a very proud story, and it's something that we want to tell more of. For example, a lot of people don't think about horses as being in the forests or deep in the forest in the brush, and indeed they were. In fact, to the north and west of here, in a reservation, a reserve actually in Canada called LaCroix, there's a Lac LaCroix pony. This is a very beautiful horse. It's very small. It looks like a little Arnold Schwarzenegger, I like to think of it. It's very muscular. It's built for the brush. And Ojibwa people, Anishinaabe people, another word for Ojibwa, but what Ojibwe people call themselves Anishinaabe. This horse was specifically for them, and this horse, as when people talk to elders, goes as far back in their memories, even past their childhood and into their parents' and grandparents' childhood. And this horse lived with them in the seasons. For example, when we think about woodland horses, we think about at least I think about the Lac La Croix pony in that seasonal lifestyle where during the winter time they were used for forestry and fur trapping. And then when spring would come and the ice began to recede from the lakes, the Lac La Croix ponies were led to the islands in the Lac La Croix area, Net Lake area, United States side, and they could do what ponies did. They'd run with each other, they developed their horse communities, and then when the ice began to develop once again in winter, the Ojibwe people would go across those ice bridges and ice areas and bring those horses back to work with them. So they very much had a seasonal working relationship with this horse, and the communities were very powerful together. And it's a story that our kids just don't see, and Indian Summer is one of those few places, and one of those few places is a place like your show, where people can hear about it and really think that our history goes far deeper than we think.
Well, and their story mirrors the Native American story. The Lac La Croix ponies were almost extinct. In 1970, there were only about 20 left. And a couple of breeders gathered 4 of them up, took them up into Canada. And it's estimated today there are about 120, still a very, very rare breed. But that does mirror the Native American story as well, in terms of near extermination. But that survival and the beauty of our heritage and culture is still very much here, which fortunately we get to celebrate.
Well, also you're representing again the traditional way of passing down the history and culture of American Indians, not on so much on the written side, but on the verbal side, on the storytelling and passing from generation to generation. And it sounds like your program mirrors all of this sort of thing. How did each of you get involved in this?
In the Painted Pony Roadshow that we're, I think it was a bit of a mind meld on both of our parts. As the marketing director for Indian Summer Festival, I challenge myself every year, how can I do this better? What else could we try to do? And we really wanted to do something that would get us out into the community, especially into our tribal communities, but our non-tribal communities as well. And so this has been something that has evolved into what it is presently, which is a little bit of dance demonstration, some learning, and lots of painting, coloring.
For me, it was a natural, because as a child I was very fortunate in that I was exposed to culture and dance and our heritage on an everyday basis. And some of the dances that I got to see as a child were fish dances or raccoon dances. There were snake dances, and there's horse dance, which we haven't seen very much of in the last few years. But Indian Summer Festival, with its theme, is bringing that back out, because indeed there is a woodland sort of horse dance that's a variant of a Western style dance. The regalia I'm wearing right now is reflective of that teaching that I've been getting about horse dancing. And for example, when you're talking about teaching young people or other adults about this kind of thing, it's not just the story that's told. It can be also in what you wear and how you move. So what I'm wearing, for example, these spots are reflective in the nature of this sort of breed of horse, a Western style of horse, but also the patchwork of painted ponies. So when I'm wearing this shirt, people that know about culture and a little bit about our history can know that this person really is channeling into that speed and that power of that horse. And that's why the shirt is constructed the manner in which it is, and Siobhan made this for me, and it's reflective of the trader period where it's got a more full sleeve to it and so on. And the copper culture that's here in Wisconsin and celebrated around the world, our copper culture history in Wisconsin, is in very plain right here in the copper pieces that are here. And certainly the waterways that are so important are reflected in the mirrors that are on this otter hide that I wear, otter yoke around my outfit. So it's not just all about the beautiful beadwork as part of the art, but there's more to the story than meets the eye. And when you come to events like this Native American youth dancers that'll be dancing tonight, down at this amazing lakefront in the community here in Hudson. I mean, I think, and I hope every dad and mom and grandma and grandpa take advantage of coming to see it, because it's really special. Because it's about culture sharing and not just seeing some pretty dance, but also learning about themselves. Because horses have a history with all of us, not just Native people.
Can I ask you about the beadwork and
sure.
the quill breastplate? What are the stories about?
Oh,
those?
Well, this is a very much a Ho-Chunk design, and we're in a Ho-Chunk ancestral area. So I thought it would be pretty cool to wear some of that beadwork to honor that tradition, even though being of a mixed tribal ancestry myself, I'm not Ho-Chunk. But when as a child I grew up with the story of them and how kind and generous that nation was to the places I come from. So when I saw this kind of beadwork that was available, and I got it because I thought I want to wear it in the area from which it's come and inspired. The piece behind it here, this kind of is in general, it's made of plastic these days, but instead of being a bulletproof kind of thing, we only had to worry about arrows, knives, pointy objects, and so on. So if you had something solid in front of you, that could be a protection. And it wasn't just about war. It was about kind of going from one place to another, and you never know when something might hit you or something might kind of scratch and so on. You'd kind of wear that as a covering, as a protective, sometimes as a daily piece of wear in history. Nowadays, our regalia very much reflects history, but it's very much a part of today. So you get vibrant, beautiful colors and beads from Czechoslovakia and Germany and all kinds of other stuff. When people come to PAWS, they need to remember, I think, that it very much is a multicultural affair, very much a multicultural presence, and it's just not Native presence. There's also European and Chinese and that sort of Asian presence very much in all of what folks are seeing. Sometimes they just want to narrow that vision to, well, that's just a Native thing. And it's not. Their ancestors might have a part of the story that we're telling up on that stage or through our dance.
For example, very, very prevalent in the lumber camps in Wisconsin, especially northern Wisconsin. But we call it our fiddle and jig, and that was heavily influenced by the Irish jig. And in those camps, one of our most popular events at Indian Summer Festival, usually about 5 o'clock on Saturday. So that would be September 6th. But if you were to come and watch that, you would definitely pick up on the Irish influence blended right in there with the Native culture.
Thanks for explaining on the clothing, but can I ask you now about some of the meaning behind Native American, American Indian dancing and what the stories are and how that supports the culture and passes things on? I'm afraid some people tend to think that it's just a dance with no particular meaning of any sort. It may have a theme, but there is serious cultural things and historical things behind these dances. It's also important, as we all know, to perpetuate language. And so the American Indian languages must be saved, but so must these dances.
I think you're right. We just came from a powwow or a gathering, a dance gathering in Lac du Flambeau here in Wisconsin, and they had this beautiful buck and doe dance. And just kind of as an observer, because there's only so many people that can participate, what you have is a group of women that portray the doe, and then two guys. One is the older buck, the older, more knowledgeable, the very strong, kind of wise one. And then there's a younger guy that kind of comes around and wants to become a part of that herd and push the old buck out of the way. And while the song is going on for this buck and doe dance, right before your eyes, no matter how old you are or what culture you come from, you can see a story that relates to nature that's around us every day. Even though we may not see it, it's there. And so you'll see in parts of the dance how the buck will rub on a tree or a post. You see how the buck kind of marks his territory. You can see how the buck sort of protects and watches over the does that are there, and how the other buck tries to come in and get their interest in very real ways that you can see in nature are reflected in that dance. So sometimes when it comes to being telling stories about our culture, it's not just in storytelling or a narrative piece or no matter language. it can be in the dance. So at that same powwow, we saw a fish dance, right?
Right. And fish dance is, what I love about it is that it feels a bit like synchronized dancing, because all of the men are doing the same movements. And they're from grown men all the way down to the littlest guys, as long as they can walk on their feet and they can dance. And they go through the various movements, mimicking the fish during certain seasons, spawning and swimming, and when they get stuck in the water. And it's really lovely to watch. There's also the swan dance, and that's a dance for women. And again, as I think as an observer, if you don't understand the meaning, you might be scratching your head going, well, what's going on? But the women all dancing, it's very graceful. Their arms are out. There's a leader, and they actually get into a formation just like swans will do, or birds of the air will even do, that kind of flying formation or swimming formation. So there's always a meaning and a connection or a story that's being told.
Much of the American Indian culture, history, lifestyle seems to relate to animals of the forest, etc. Why is that? What is the meaning to be derived for people today from these associations of these stories with animal and nature?
The base of understanding for that is that when Native people see nature, we're not apart from it. We're a part of it. So when we see animals, we see relatives, we see brothers and sisters, we see animals that are very much a part of our lives, that have duties and responsibilities that are ingrained in them. Some of the stories you'll hear from some of our elder people is a guy who just goes fishing. He may put some certain things in the water to give thanks to that water and permission to go and fish in that water. And he's looking to sustain his life, his family's life, by eating. And so the responsibility of the fish that are in the water is to help sustain us. So when we look at fishing, it's not like us against the fish. What we're doing is we're approaching that water in a respectful way. We're approaching that life, that animal, in a respectful way, and saying we have these responsibilities, and one of the responsibilities is sustenance, because one day our bodies will sustain them, but there's a responsibility that they have. One of them is to help sustain us. And so what they do is they'll give us that life so we can have our life, and for that we give thanks. So we don't see any difference between us and the animals. They're very much our relative and friend. And I think that's written in the story of my friend Pendy here, just in how her headdress is. When I made this, I made it out of a Pendleton material. And a Lakota friend was telling me about how this is connected to them, that animal and human are one. When they would get into cavalry mode, so to speak, or battle dress ready in battle mode, the idea is that the rider would dress very much alike with their horse. So what you would see is, while this is a smaller version of it, their headdresses may match, the colors may match. And when someone would see them on a field of battle approaching them at that 25, 30 miles an hour coming after them, they're 8 feet, 10 feet tall, and they look like they're moving as one. And the idea of battle isn't death. It's different for Native people in those sorts of contexts. It's more about your power within, the power that you can vibrate out without. And when enemies see that kind of power, or a creature that's moving as one, that's designed and looks to be as one, they'll scatter and they'll go away from there because of the power and nature of it. So it's not just about going out there and doing away with someone else. It's about representing yourself in the very best way, and the world taking notice of that, and then what reactions the world has to that. And that sort of power and being goes far beyond just this world that we're in. It can be seen by those that, within a spiritual sense, are witnesses to that as well. So when the horses are dressed in things like this, that's kind of us connecting to them. And it's not just an animal or something that's separate in the English language. Those are horses. You know, they're very much addressed as our relatives and our friends, and the ones that are there to protect us, to help sustain us. And then we, in our way, serve them. So that's what we're trying to impart with things like Indian Summer and the Dance Tonight.
Well, this is I suppose, the circle of life sort of thinking. I'm not sure that a lot of people in contemporary society still really ever think about the circle of things, but this is certainly a major part of American Indian life, history, and culture. Are there any other thoughts you have on this sort of life circle as it applies to Native Americans?
Well, I think for me, in terms of the life circle, Native Americans, and just connecting again with our theme of Horse Nation celebration, is just that remembering piece. Because I think as woodland tribes, we tend to think of ourselves as our mode of transportation was waterway. And of course, that's true traditionally until the advent of the horse. And that reconnecting to our own history, some of that was lost, or we were distracted, forgot it. There was another story being told by, I think, popular media in Hollywood in terms of the Western Plains. So for me, it's all about reconnecting again with things that have been lost and reclaiming them and making them our own. And I really enjoy that part of it.
As an aside, we have an object here on the table that I wanted to ask you about. If you could tell us about the meanings involved in this.
This is one of my dance sticks when I'm doing the horse dance, and it's a reflective nature of this horse. And this horse is particular to a Nez Perce people. Now, those folks are west of the Mississippi River, but their horse story very much reflects the story of the Lac La Croix pony. In that when Westerners or Europeans first came into contact with Nez Perce, or the people of Chief Joseph, a lot of maybe kids or others, he was of that tribe. They were known for this type of breed and markings of horses, and very proud of it, and they had them by the thousands. And when first coming into contact, they were traded for, they were highly prized, not just by natives, but by the non-natives that they came into contact with. Well, eventually through warfare and the driving native people out of their lands, they saw that these horses were so connected to the people, not apart from them, but a part of the people. The devastating way of waging war against native people was to kill every last one of these sorts of horses. And while that effort was being mounted to drive the Nez Perce onto reservations so they couldn't wander and have their native way of life that they had before, these horses were being killed. But an effort was launched by native people and non-native people. And I think that's some of the story that's forgotten, is how our cultures actually share the horrors of what war can bring. And that through our cooperation, salvation can come. This horse breed was saved by folks that looked at it as a beautiful, responsible, and important part of their history. And it wasn't just Nez Perce people that saw that. It was Anglo people, it was Americans as well, that went into these breeding programs to restore the horse. And I think that's a heck of a story. And I wanted to show that when I'm horse dancing, is I think if I had this as a Lac La Croix pony, people might not recognize it as readily. But taking some cultural borrowing from the story west of the Mississippi River, that story of survival, that story of actually rejuvenation and renaissance, that's what this stick is about to me. So his eyes are painted. You can see the spots are reminiscent of this shirt as well. And horse mane and horse tail is all a part of it. And this is his hoof. So while not an exact replica, you can get the idea that, hey, even a little person who's not native can take a look up there and tell their mom or dad, hey, that guy's got some horse stuff on, or look, he's moving like that horse. And kind of a little bit of me is, no matter what culture that kid's from, my idea is I hope they come to Indian Summer, and I also hope they get to learn a little bit more about horses, and maybe even have their family go for a ride on one if they've never done it, and learn how to connect to those horses. Because as you were saying before, these horses so sensitive that they're used in part of therapy for our veterans coming back who have post-traumatic stress, or children with autism. These horses, I've heard you say, are 14 times more sensitive to our world, and that connection to another human being can help bring them out. And that kind of story is what we tell, where kids are actually having fun painting the horse. We'll actually relate these stories to them while they're doing something that's fun and creative for them. We want them to take away some of the more powerful stories in there besides just putting paint on a horse. That's fun and makes for great pictures, but it also gives us a chance to interact with them in a really cool way.
But the dance stick itself, that's real horsehair. The dots mimic the Appaloosa, that's the breed there. And one of the things I've learned this year, we attended the Midwest Horse Fair in Madison earlier this year, and that there are dozens of subbreeds of Appaloosa. I had no idea. I thought there was one Appaloosa, one kind of horse called an Appaloosa. But it again mimics the story, I think, of Native people, that we are many different tribes and cultures. And although we have many similarities, we have our own unique and distinct ways and stories and languages, all of the above. So that's what I really enjoy about the Appaloosa. And that's what the dots here and the dots on his shirt really are representing, is that particular breed of horse.
Well, the horse and the buffalo are two of the great classic, not only animals, but symbols of the history of this country. And I'm really pleased that you're promoting the horse aspect of it here. Maybe sometime we'll look forward to a buffalo aspect as well.
Give that a shot, certainly. Certainly next year, Indian Summer Festival, our theme will be about clans. And so I didn't want to get into that because it's a much longer discussion, but when you start to wonder, well, why the animals in our dances? We are very much clan-based. So you have fish clan, bear clan, bobcat clan, deer clan. There's various clans, and every tribe has its own clan system as well. So that's a fascinating subject unto itself.
So that would be next year's theme.
Right.
But this year, it's Horse Nation.
Right.
It is September 5th, 6th, and 7th, 2014 at the Henry Mayer Festival Park in Milwaukee.
Right.
Anything else we want to say about the event or the Horse Nation or Indian Summer Festivals?
Oh, sure. It's going to be a fabulous year. We anticipate at least 10 American Indian ponies live on the grounds. We have a fabulous man coming. I believe he is from the Cheyenne tribe. I hope I have that right. His name is Philip Whiteman Jr. And he is going to really show us a different way of working with horses, training horses. Again, the native perspective. So you'll be able to see the live horses. We also have Olympic-style native boxing, and that's something we haven't really had much of a chance to talk about. Last year, we brought it back to the festival, immensely popular. This year, we actually have a character. His name is Champ, the amazing boxing horse, and we've been taking him around for the children as well. So he's all in a kind of costume character, has a lot of fun, but promoting youth activity, sports, as a positive outlet for children, as opposed to all the other things that certainly could get them into trouble. And if you go to our website, indiansummer.org, you can learn all about this year's festival, or visit us on Facebook, Indian Summer Festival, and keep up with the travels of the Painted Pony Roadshow there.
We're on Facebook with the Painted Pony Roadshow. That's lots of fun. Indian Summer, you can get a hold of us through there. And also for folks in this area, I think they might have a special interest in what's happening in Indian Summer because of La Crosse. La Crosse, Wisconsin, certainly named for the game that happened on the shores of the Mississippi, and a game that was prevalent all over the state of Wisconsin. We have those games right there at Indian Summer. And for me, I think the message of the horse that's so great is that we get a chance to remind people that horses originated from our continent. Not Europe, not Asia. They originated here, and they were gone for a while, and they returned back with Columbus and others. And as some tribes say, the grass remembered them. If you might know that you change a horse's diet, they might sick, they might get very ill, or they may even perish. But if they're fed well and their diet is something they're used to, they'll flourish. And certainly those horses flourished by the thousands, and some people even say the herds into the millions across the continents, North America, Central America, South America. And we're just trying to tell that story, and lest people forget when they'll say, hey, that horse in particular came from Spain, or that horse this came from wherever. Well, all those horses have common ancestry, and it's right here in what we're calling United States, Canada area, and we want to drive that home, is that those horses, this is their home, and help us tell the story.
Well, clearly this is important, both historically and culturally, and I thank you people for doing this. And I want to thank you for coming by today to talk about all of this. We thank Siobhan Marks and we thank Mark Denning, both of you, for all your efforts and taking the time out to talk to us.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Miigwech.